Welcome to a Nerdy Bunch presentation of Back to the Future. We traverse the space-time continuum, watching movies 20 years or older to discuss their relevance then and how they hold up now. I'm your host, English Dave, and helping me get ready to rob a little kid is my fellow Wet Bandit, Rocket Mike. What's up, Mike?
What's up? Getting ready to rob a little kid. Like, okay. I didn't know I was walking into that day. I was like, oh, okay, so this is definitely illegal and not. So this is a sticky situation. This is a sticky bandit. Yeah.
Yes. No. Sticky bandits.
No, that's right. Yeah.
It's our next. It's our next mission. After we go to prison,
wet. Yeah.
And then we come back out again. We become the sticky bandits. Yeah. Originally, formerly the wet bandits. I love how that running joke and how by the end of it, it's what gets them in even more trouble. Because the cop is like, "Oh, thanks. We know every house you robbed because of your signature." If you guys haven't realized, we're here to talk about classic Christmas movie Home Alone. It's like many Christmas movies where it's just set around Christmas and there's no Christmas magic to it, but it's not about Christmas.
Yeah, there was you got a couple of Christmas related scenes with the guy in the Santa outfit and I don't know. I think he was trying to find presents for his siblings at one point, but
sure.
Yeah. But other than that, yeah, and it was just it just happens around Christmas. Same thing with our last John Hughes review. It just happened to be around Thanksgiving.
They just needed an excuse for the family to go on vacation. Christmas, there you go. It could happen in summer vacation, right? This movie was released November 16th, 1990. This movie's 30 years old, Mike.
I thought it came out later.
Yeah. It's a 30-year-old movie. Oof. And that ages us.
I know. When I saw this, I was like, I don't know how if I even have a memory that goes back that far.
Yeah, no. It was made on a very modest budget of $18 million, which you can consider.
Okay, I just pull that out of my pocket. You guys need a hand with any more of that?
I mean, even at the time, with inflation and everything like that, that's still a very modest budget. It went on to make $477.1 million. And went on to be the highest grossing film of that year, even though it came out at the latter end of the year, came out in November, and I think it spent 12 weeks or something at number one, destroyed everything. And this is a year that gave us Ghost, Dances with Wolves, Pretty Woman, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Total Recall, Die Hard 2, Kindergarten Cop.
So, wow. Well, they didn't have the Avengers back then, so no. I can understand they didn't dominate.
This made a star of Macaulay Culkin, though he had been in one of John Hughes' movies before. Previously, he was in Uncle Buck, and that's how he got the attention of the director and the producer of this film. Mike, I know you have more information about that later. And starring Joe Pesci as well. At the time, people don't, we look at it and think how hilarious it was, but at the time, that was a big deal for Joe Pesci to be in a movie like this. This is someone
for sure.
Goodfellas. A comedy like this. What?
Yeah. Take any one of them too, Pacino's working with Steve Martin suddenly. I was like, what?
Right. It's what? And Daniel Stern, who's, everyone loves him as Harry. And of course, Catherine O'Hara, who's recently had a whole kind of rebirth in her career with Schitt's Creek.
Schitt's Creek, yeah.
And there's a lot of people that would look at Schitt's Creek and not even realize that she was famous in Home Alone or vice versa. She's having a great comeback in that. I think she's hilarious in that. Absolutely
she's always been the mom from Home Alone for me.
Exactly.
And everything I've seen her in.
You mentioned this before off podcast. I think it was off podcast. I can't remember. But this is written by John Hughes, who gave us such famous movies as Ferris Bueller. Check it out. We have a Back to the Future on that. And also a famous movie. He did Breakfast Club as well. That's another famous movie of his. Mm-hmm. It's surprising because this is the kind of movie that you'd think he would direct, but I'm glad he didn't. I think there's a sensibility that Chris Columbus brought to it that added.
It was nice, yeah. He was just like the overseer,
Yes.
Just making sure it all goes well, and it's still, you can call it still a John Hughes movie, but directed by Christopher Columbus.
Yes. I think at its core, it feels like a John Hughes movie, but the zaniness is where Chris Columbus comes into.
Yeah. It feels like it's like crisper, it has this kind of new car smell to it almost.
Yeah.
It's like, it's almost like, did John Hughes have a son? Because it definitely would have been it,
in some ways it's almost like a natural, not direct, but natural evolution of something like Ferris Bueller,
Hmm.
right? In terms of like the weird, crazy, almost cartoony elements of it, and then this just takes it to 11, right?
Oh yeah.
This is also famously scored by John Williams. Yeah, John Williams has given us so much,
What hasn't
and
he touched?
right,
That
and
isn't great, you know.
and I think this is up there with some of his best scores. I think it's one of the best scores in film. You know, it's one of those scores that as soon as you hear the music, you're like Home Alone.
Yeah.
You know, you
Da,
just
da,
can't.
da, 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 da,
Right?
da, da, da.
So well done. And I think just throughout the whole movie, there are moments where the score just drops and various elements of the score drop, and you can't help but sing along with it.
Mhm.
You know, like while you're watching the movie. And I think that's what makes it partly what makes the movie great. Um, I'm gonna start off with you, Mike. Well, I have to start off with you. Raven and Mercedes can't make it till a bit. They'll probably join us partway through this podcast or in part 2 of this podcast. But Mike, we all have a history with this film. I don't know if you can remember your first time, but what is your history with this film in general, and what did it feel like to revisit it now?
I just remember watching it with my cousin who was my age at the time. I think maybe he was like 3, 4 years old, which is obviously right at that time. The movie had been out already for like a good 2 years, I think, at least. But I just remember watching it on VHS at home. And as we're watching it, we're like, I think we can make this booby trap, you know, like maybe not the paint cans, you know, but let's just put down, like, you know, some of the toy soldiers on the
Yeah,
floor and really piss off our parents, you know. But that's all it is. It just seemed like a really elaborate like prank movie, but not like prank. You know, now seeing like the weight of what was on the line. You know, as a kid, you're like, oh, you know, he's just putting up traps. These are fun, cool. Like it's very like zany, kind of cartoony way. You know. But it's perfect for kids. And now looking back at it, you know, watching it again, you know, like most movies, you pick up on a lot of the dialogue that you hadn't catch before, and you just get a lot of more like angles that you never looked at it from. And so it's great going back with a fresh set of eyes. And also for some reason, I don't know why, I just completely missed that Joe Pesci was the cop in the beginning of the
yeah.
movie. You know, like
Scoping
there
out
he
the
is.
place.
Yeah,
Yep,
he's right.
right at
Like
the beginning.
did not click when I was a kid watching it. I'm like, no, that's the bad guy. It's just like, nah, it's just another cop.
And it does some great foreshadowing in that moment with the gold tooth as well.
Yeah,
When
yeah,
Kevin
yeah,
later
yeah.
on recognizes him. Now, I this is a movie as well. I mean, I didn't see this in theaters. I saw this on VHS as well, and it's one of those movies that I saw many times on VHS. So much so to the point where you start creating narratives of what you think the film is, and watching it again, I've seen it many times over the years. Obviously, it's one of those films every Christmas.
Yeah.
Probably I've seen this movie every Christmas, but watching it with an analytical eye, you realize, just like you said, you notice different aspects to the narrative. You're like, oh, I didn't realize that. Oh, I didn't think about this, or just like from the perspective, right? The movie has, I think, what makes the movie work, because they did sequels, and after 2 was fun, but then you had 3 and 4, and I think one of the reasons why movies like 3 and 4 failed is, as zany as this movie is, it doesn't forget the heart. And I think there's a heart, and I think I noticed that more this time around, like really paying attention. And I think because of the heart of the film, you quickly subconsciously buy into the ridiculous concept,
Yeah.
because there's so much heart to it. And he's and obviously Macaulay is so great at the character, where he could have easily been an asshole that you just hate.
Oh yeah,
But,
he
but
starts
somehow,
off that way.
exactly. I was watching with my wife the other day, and she's like, "Wait a minute, he's Bart Simpson." And I was like, "Holy shit!" He could have
That's
played in
pretty
live
good.
action at the time.
He's a little shit when you first meet him, you know?
Yep, he is. That's the thing.
Like,
He's a terrible little kid, but then somehow, we get the way the movie's structured, you're still there with him.
yeah.
And I think because the movie has heart, there's a through line of the film, because it is one of those films where, and also another thing watching it as an adult is, it's the Christmasness of the film is the wish fulfillment, right? Like Kevin wishes his parents disappeared, and even his mom kind of like, when you're either parents, I can imagine. I'm not a parent yet, but I can imagine. There's this moment where you're just like, can I just have one day without my kids? And that happens.
Yeah.
It's
Partly
like,
that night, especially, she's like, well,
right.
go ahead. Maybe
Yeah,
it'll
exactly.
happen, you know? Yeah.
and it's like one of those, well, be careful what you wish for
Mhm.
kind of, and I think that's what makes it a Christmas story, and I think that's also what gives it the heart, because then by the end of the movie, when you have like a old man Marley kind of involved, which reminds Kevin, and the story is reminds you the importance of family and
Yeah.
why you love family, and that's when it's like, damn it, this movie has heart to it.
And I realized they
Okay,
took the same formula in the second one,
oh
with
yeah,
the pigeon lady.
yeah,
It's almost the same exact, just like frame for frame,
oh
to
yeah,
the point.
because
But you don't mind it because again, you go back to it and like these are the two movies that had a lot of heart, and it was because they had characters like that where Kevin was able to open up to complete strangers, and a lot of people had a false idea about them, not knowing that they are actually also great, good-hearted people. And of course, after like 3, 4, they don't have that. You don't have that, connection with a total stranger that was ready to help you out and you know, help each other out in a way.
I think part of the
Uh,
problem is that subsequent movies focus so much on the gags.
yeah.
And when another thing I noticed about this movie is, as a kid, I thought the whole movie was him uh, 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 doing stuff to them, and trapping them, and all the gags and things like that. But
Yeah.
that's just a small part of the last
Right.
act.
Yeah.
It's so short. A
Like
lot of the movies
the
build up,
half hour, maybe 45 minutes tops of
right?
just
Right?
everything you thought the whole movie was about. Yeah.
Yeah, and in a way, it kind of speaks to the pacing of the film. I think it's very well paced, that you think that's the whole movie when it's just the last part of the movie, and so
Mhm.
it's like, which means that the build up to it isn't boring because you're still engaged. It's just you don't realize how much there is, right? And I think part of that build up also helps set the stakes, because as zany and silly as the movie is, you never think, oh, Kevin's fine. It constantly, maybe towards the end you realize, okay, this kid is smart,
Mhm.
but the stakes are there. You never quite think, oh, there are no stakes for this boy. Nothing will ever happen to him. You do worry for him at one point, like, what if something happens to him? Even the moment where he gets caught at the end, you're like, oh shit,
Yeah.
he
That
got
was
caught.
it. Yeah.
You know,
When it
and
gets hung up on that
mhm,
little down that door, and I was like,
yeah.
well, then this is it.
Yeah. And there's other things I didn't notice in terms of the narrative. We'll go into it in the second part. Little things like, I didn't pay attention. I always thought this whole time Kevin's dad paid for the tickets and everything, the holiday to Paris. It's not him. It was his brother, who's never seen on screen,
Oh
Rob
yeah, yeah, I know. He keeps
McAllister.
talking about his brother Rob.
Yeah,
It's always in passing.
yeah. And he's the one that paid for everyone's tickets to go. And I was like, oh. And then those who pay attention, it's his house in New York.
But it's so easy to assume it's Kevin's dad. Look at what they're living. Look at the size of that house. I'm like, how do you not have, like a staff working for you, like
Right?
around the clock, especially all those people too, all those relatives in there. And you're able to house them easily, except for like, yeah, you got to share some beds, but wow, it's huge. Like it did not even cross my mind that he didn't pay for the ticket. It was only his
Right.
brother.
And another thing I didn't realize until subsequent viewings, it was like, well, who are Kevin's siblings? Because I always used to think it was just
Right.
Buzz.
Yeah, same.
I thought it was only Buzz was his brother, but you're like, no, he actually has two brothers and a sister. They're a family of five, and then everyone else is cousins. Like, oh,
I can't remember who's who,
yeah, no, like I can't
They all
remember
they
who's
all mesh the same. Like everyone is a cousin
who.
and a sibling.
Though I will say that in terms of immediate family, there's a scene where Kevin's looking at a family portrait,
Hmm.
and I was like, they did a good job with casting this. They look like a family. I was like, okay, I fucks with that. I think Catherine O'Hara looked like she could be his mom.
Yeah. Yeah,
She,
yeah, yeah.
she did the part right. Before we go further, Mike, do you have any brief history on how this film came together?
Yeah. So, just like we were actually talking about just a moment ago, John Hughes has a way of taking his personal experience and turning it into a whole hit movie. Like in this, it was his anxiety in traveling, and he took his kids to Europe, and it was just like through that whole stressful time. And when he came back home, he had the idea of like, what if I had like left one of them here? And then it just took him 2 weeks, I think, to write the whole thing. And then even then, he thought he was being too slow,
Of
which is
course.
nuts. But I'm like, and we go back and I'm like, how did he write Ferris Bueller? I'm like, yeah, I just didn't feel like going to school one day. And so they're like, what happened? What about Breakfast Club? Yeah, I just got detention, and
Because I didn't go to school.
while I was in detention, I wrote a whole movie, so can't stop me. But yeah, that's essentially it. I mean, and it's like you said, Macaulay Culkin was discovered because he was in Uncle Buck, which I still have yet to see. Now that's on my top of my list.
Though Chris Columbus didn't want to use him because
Really?
at the time, because John Hughes is the one who introduced Chris Columbus to Macaulay Culkin, and Chris Columbus liked him. It wasn't a personal thing, but he
Yeah.
was like, John Hughes found a smart, great actor kid. I want to find my own smart, great actor kid. And then he like looked at 200 kids and was like, "Damn it, Macaulay's the best." Went back to him. And then even how Chris Columbus got involved. He's someone's career, kind of like on the peripherals, paid attention to his career. He got in this film because he said no to another film. John Hughes asked him to do Christmas Vacation, and Columbus spent a time with Chevy Chase. Was like, this guy's an asshole. I don't like him. I know I need the money because Chris Columbus' previous film was one of his first films was a bomb before this, and he's like, yeah, I don't care. I don't need the money that bad.
Yeah.
And he called John Hughes and was like, I'm not doing this movie. Wow. 2 weeks later, John Hughes was like, here, do Home Alone.
Wow. So we can thank Chevy Chase for being a dick.
Right. It's good because of how it worked out. But if Chris Columbus had done it, he wouldn't have had any part in it. He would have just been like, fuck this guy, I'm just gonna just do whatever. And then it wouldn't have, regardless how good the script was, it wouldn't have worked with a director who hates the actor.
Right. But then you go back and it's actually Christopher Columbus, if he's like trying to find his kid, he kind of found it in Daniel Radcliffe when he directed the first Harry Potter movie.
Sure.
And so it's like projected him to fame. There you go.
I mean, I guess working on Home Alone with Macaulay Culkin and all these other kids, a lot of the movie, the beginning happens with other kids. And funny fact, Kieran Culkin, Macaulay Culkin's younger brother, plays the little
Fuller.
Plays Fuller, his little cousin.
His cousin, yeah.
Yeah. And so I guess that gave him a experience to working with the Harry Potter kids, I guess. Let's talk about some of the actors. You have Marv and Harry, played by Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern. I think that these two characters are also, as much as Macaulay Culkin's Kevin is the backbone of this film, so are they. The characters. I think the characters are great. They're so memorable as these guys who you hate but love. You love their interaction with each other, even though they're the bad guys. What do you think of these characters?
I wish I could have seen more of Daniel Stern. Like, I don't. Besides Home Alone, I'm like, what else? I can't picture anything else. Yeah, it's just like he kind of steals the show in some scenes. The whole tarantula, his high pitched scream, probably had me like pissing at when I first saw that, but it still gets me.
When he smacks him in the face.
Oh my god!
Move every time. That gets me.
And then, oh my god! And then in the second one with the bricks, him constantly getting hit over and over, and then oh man, he's great at physical comedy, because that's exactly where he is able to balance with Joe Pesci. Joe Pesci is really good at being intimidating, just the kind of like the brains of the operation. But then, with Marv, it's like, yeah, he's the goofy sidekick and can actually pull in more attention than Joe Pesci. I thought Joe Pesci was great, but I felt like everyone else around him was kind of shining a little bit more. But, that's why why I'm used to seeing Joe Pesci in everything but a comedy. Kind of fish out of water. You don't expect it, but it worked.
Yeah, I agree. And I think part of what makes the characters work is also the stunts that they have to go through. Obviously, the actors aren't doing themselves; they have stuntmen doing a lot of the stunts. But it's funny. I was reading somewhere how the stunts in this film were so significant that for years afterwards, people would say, "I want the Home Alone stunt guys." That's how well it was done.
Well, when one of them's lighting his head on fire, you're like, that guy.
Because and that was the point, the director and the stunt team wanted to take the stunts to 11, where it's like, simple stunts don't look funny, but the more dangerous it is, the more funny it looks in a weird way. And the director would say,
because it's real, right?
Because it's dangerous, right?
Yeah.
The director would say, I don't know how anyone didn't die. Every time they would do the stunt, I would wait. Did they get up? Are they good? And then we'd laugh at the joke.
Oh my god! Like everyone breathe. You're laughing at just being relieved that he isn't dead, less about the joke at that point.
Right, exactly. And a lot of the times, they didn't have computer technology or whatever technology we have today. They had to do a lot of this stuff, figure it out in real life. The spider stunt that you talked about earlier on. initially they wanted to use a mechanical spider. They realized this doesn't look good. They had to use a real spider and then put it on Daniel Stern's face. And so, because of a real spider, he couldn't actually scream. He had to mime that scream for them to add it in ADR afterwards.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
It's the spider. They were like, don't make a noise. That spider will bite you. Wait, what?
Oh my God.
So it's things like that.
So he's just got to be like,
yeah, exactly.
breathing it. Yeah. Oh my God.
Which that's very good ADR. I was like, oh, okay.
Yes.
Right.
I would have never known.
I'm impressed by that. And I want to talk about also the general plot. It's one of the things I was thinking about. We've all had that stage of realizing, wait, how can a parent leave their kid at home? This is stupid, blah blah blah. When you overthink the plot, you can kind of poke holes into it. But at the same time, I was thinking about the other day, if someone gives you a concept of like, okay, this is my concept about a kid who gets left home by his parents, right? That's the concept you're given, and you have to kind of run with it. I think they did a very good job of making that concept feel real, quote unquote, because the chain of events that happen, it kind of makes sense. Again, you have to kind of suspend belief here and there, but like things like the fight happening, which knocks Kevin's ticket into the trash, and then the power goes out, which means they're late for work, for the flight, and then traveling on the holidays, it's already stressful as it is, and then that stupid kid who's fucking nosy and gets counted.
Questions, man.
Right. So I just thinking of it and just like within the logic that the film creates in itself. I'm like, you know what? It makes sense also because the film addresses itself, right? There's that whole moment between, what's up, Mercedes?
What's up, guys?
Thanks for joining us.
I know, better late than never.
Hey, you're here. Mercedes, you're here. Is there anything in the story? We're just talking general chat about the story. What do you think of the story itself?
So when we all saw Home Alone, or we heard this concept of Home Alone coming out, because it's 1990, so by the time I actually saw it, it had already been out for 10 years. So this whole concept of a movie of a child being left behind, we were like, but still the fact that it was still unbelievable to our sort of circumstance, but the fact that we were like involved in it, like we believed it, and then we loved it after we all saw it, like didn't matter how old we were. Made me really love this movie. And then what I loved about this movie is that it didn't necessarily hit Christmas for me. It just hit like, it was like a true kids movie for me.
Yeah, and again, the Christmas part of it happens because there's elements of it being a Christmas miracle. Because from Kevin's point of view, he makes a wish for his family to disappear. And then by the end of the movie, he makes a wish for them to come back, and then they come back. So like in his mind, it was his fault.
Right?
What he did. Yeah. It's almost like a reverse It's a Wonderful Life, because he realized through this whole story. Another thing I noticed this time around is that at the beginning of the story, Kevin is constantly told that he's useless and he can't do anything. Sometimes it makes me think, no wonder he's a dick to everyone. Everyone's a dick to him. It's like, which started first?
Pass it on,
right? Like because his older siblings, he's the youngest. They're all assholes to him. Buzz is the worst. And just like all he wanted was cheese pizza, and they ate all the cheese pizza. Buzz started that fight, by the way. He instigated that fight, looking at it. And so then throughout the movie, Kevin learns that actually, I'm not useless. I can go grocery shopping. I can stop thieves from stealing shit in my house. I can protect my shit. But at the same time, he also learns that I can also love my family too. And I kind of like that kind of transition for his character in the film. I think that's all for part. Actually, I want to talk quickly, ask you, Mercedes, and I'll ask you, Mike, the same question. I know it's a hard question, what is your favorite stunt gag in this film? In terms of his traps, one of his traps, which is your favorite one?
Oh.
I mean, without being too cliche, everyone has to say, you dirty, stinking animals. Actually, it's filthy. It's filthy. You filthy animals.
Oh, when he tricks Marv. When he tricks Marv.
Like, that's the best gag of all time. Because even when they made that, they didn't plan for that to happen that way. So that's how you know, like, it's comedy gold right there. So I don't feel like that counts. But now I have to think, like, give me 2 more seconds.
All right, I'll come back to you, Mike.
So
what's one of your favorite gags?
It's always Marv. When he's finally making his way up the basement, he's already had ironing, or an iron smack into his face. and now he's like slowly walking up these stairs with like after going through like the toy ornaments or the Christmas ornaments that have already like cut us up his feet. Actually, no, this was before. It's the tar stairs. And going up there, right? And it's like finally making his way. You think like, oh, I've dealt with enough pain already. You know, I just got smacked in the face. Like that should have been like shattered his nose. But no, of course, it's a kid's movie. But it's only when he steps on the nail. And it was just that angle that just hit it, that made it look so real. That's kind of like, yeah, you just got in there just enough to feel that.
I guess my favorite gag is the doorknob, because that's an ode to I guess Raiders of the Lost Ark, when Indiana Jones picks up. So he's like, and then he picks it up and
holds
like,
on to it, and then it follows up into the sequel too. He still has the M.
With the M on his hand. Yep.
That's how he looks at it when the kid's at the hotel, and he's like, it's the best movie. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I think this movie still holds up. I think it's absolutely great. It's funny. I want to see. I was saying to somebody that I'd love to see a comedic movie, maybe in the vein of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, from the mom's perspective, trying to get back home. That's what I'd like to see, because there's bits that we don't see. Because when she shouts at the stewardess at the airport, she's like, "I went from so and so to so and so to so and so." She mentions all these places that we didn't see her go to. So it's like you could create a whole kind of narrative based on that.
Right.
And she could have just like, turned it into an R-rated and just, I have been to fucking Dallas, to fucking St. Louis, to fucking, where am I?
There's a cameo for Planes, Trains.
Yeah.
And also another movie I'd like to see, the movie within the movie that we see, that Mercedes mentioned, the filthy animals. That is not a real movie. A lot of people used to think, myself included, used to think that's a real movie. Nope, that is not a real movie.
Some guy got to do that scene, like so they hired you to be like, hey, so we need you to do a scene in Home Alone, but like you're doing this movie, but like it's not a movie.
It's just a
movie within a movie. Yeah.
The movie within him. And little did he know that he would be immortalized as all time, be a fucking meme. Like he's a Christmas meme now. I think in 2016.
Every Christmas.
2016. I think that was the first time I saw You Filthy Animals.
The movie
meme.
The movie is called Angels with Filthy Souls, which I think is a great title.
It is.
Great title. And I think somebody should make that movie, like with those scenes, make sense of what happened before and after that scene.
Yeah.
Why did snakes need to get killed and shot 1,000 times? Huh?
Why hasn't that happened? And the fact that snakes on a plane happened and they never used that as a whole premise is like beyond me, because at least you would have had like a segue.
Like there he is.
But like, why? I'm tired of these damn snakes on this damn plane, you filthy animals. Like my
It's the snakes family.
Right. On that note, that's the end of part 1. I think this movie is fantastically great, and I'll continue to watch it, and I'll make my kids watch it, but tell them not to get any ideas, because you can't act up like that. If you get left at home, call the damn police. And that's the end of part 1 of our 2-part podcast series revisiting the Christmas classic. Stay tuned over the next few days, where we'll be releasing part 2, where we take a deeper dive into the film, breaking down the various scenes and the various traps Kevin lays for the Wet Bandits. So make sure to revisit that film if you haven't had a chance already, then come back and check out that podcast once it's up. Thanks, nerds, for listening. This has been a Nerdy Bunch presentation of Back to the Feature. And as always, keep it nerdy.